Pardon the interruption, but I'm Pablo Torre. Wilbon has the day off, and I appreciate you wanting to work with me, Tony.
Tony Kornheiser. Actually, I wanted the day off too, but Wilbon beat me to it. But I'm here. It's good. I'm here. Happy to work. Yeah.
He always seems to have first dibs on vacation days. I have noticed that. As much as I enjoy being here, I do notice that he's always first to the poll on that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? He's got houses in so many parts of the country, he needs to check on them all the time. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. Wilbon couldn't finish what he started, so coming out of the bullpen, maybe even to tip the bullpen cart drivers, our great friend, the host of the podcast, Pablo Torre, finds out the athlete named Pablo Torre. And we begin today with Jaylen Brown scoring 40 points and the Boston Celtics running away from Indiana in the second half last night and winning by 16. Also in that second half, Indiana's Tyrese Halliburton left the game with a hamstring problem, an injury that previously kept Halliburton out of 10 regular season games. So, Pablo, how did last night's result impact your view of this series?
Yeah, Tony, you have cooked steak for me. You've been very kind to me. You've cooked steak for me. I want to put this in the context of steak, okay? So after game one, I was like, this feels medium well. Okay, they choke away the lead, the Pacers do, the Celtics come back medium well. This feels like we got to throw this series in the trash. This is beyond well done, this is burnt, this is bad. This is not a thing the Pacers can recover from. And Tyrese Halliburton, when he got hurt, okay, they were losing to the Celtics in the third quarter. It's not as if this was a series they were in control of. This just feels like one of those things that I am very tempted to stop paying attention to, even as I know that the Celtics have a habit of at least losing one game against these injury-plagued teams that they've played so far in the postseason.
Yeah, so let's go through the Celtics pattern. The pattern is that they lose game two at home, and then they win three in a row, and they close out a series. They did not lose game two last night. They did not even lose game one, which they should have lost.
Yes.
So as you look forward, Boston now goes on the road where they're 4-0. Indiana is great at home. Indiana in these playoffs is 6-0 at home. But I think you and I would both agree that Boston is probably a better team, even if Halliburton is healthy, and that they are a significantly better team if Halliburton were to not play these games. So I look at this, Pablo, as I don't see how Boston could probably be any worse than coming back home to Boston at 3-1. And for me, last night's game just confirmed what I thought after game one, that Indiana had missed a golden opportunity. Halliburton is their best and most important player, as is Anthony Edwards. You know, on Minnesota, they're attractive, they're affable, they're emerging stars. But at least last night, Indiana was +1 when Halliburton was out there, -17 after that. So he's a consequential player.
Oh, he is. And look, the Celtics, I'm not here to say that the Celtics' run to the NBA Finals, which I am now assuming, is invalid because they face teams in the Heat and the Bulls, in the Cavs, excuse me, that are deeply injured, and they have been missing their best players for stretches at a time. I'm just saying that when you have the Celtics, who have the deepest starting lineup, not depth overall, but just like 1 to 5, probably the strongest starting lineup in the NBA, that they're not going to have much in the way of opposition to them. And so this becomes a different sort of stakes to talk about that, Tony.
Yeah.
Will they choke? Will the Celtics choke this giant lead away? I don't think so.
Jaylen Brown has 66 points in 2 games. He's shooting 24 for 57, which is over 50%, right? Yep. I mean, he saved one game and he won another, but he couldn't get enough votes for even third team All-NBA. Really? Really?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Jason Tatum gets that. Jaylen Brown is trying to prove to you that he deserved it. But I want to move to the Oilers beating the Stars in Dallas, Tony, in Game 1 of the Western Conference Final last night. Because Connor McDavid was in the middle of the biggest moments. There he was earning a 4-minute high-stick penalty at the start of the first overtime that Edmonton killed off. He was missing a point-blank chance to end the game in that same period. He was scoring the game-winning goal in the second overtime. And so the question, Tony, is whether it is fair to cast this series as a referendum on Connor McDavid's greatness.
I'm going to get to that in a second. I just want to talk about the 4-minute high-sticking penalty. When I saw that on replay, it honestly looked to me like the Dallas player, that his stick was forcing McDavid's stick up into him. I'm not saying it's not a penalty. I'm saying it did not appear to be intentional at all. Now, is it fair to cast this as a referendum on the greatness of Connor McDavid? No, because no. He's 27 years old. No, it's not fair. You can't You're going to make a judgment now when the guy could have 8 to 10 years of great hockey playing in front of him? What if he wins 3 cups in his 30s and you're stuck back here saying, oh, he's no good? But even though it is not fair, it's totally understandable. I mean, we've had guests on this show say of Connor McDavid, he has a greater skill set than anybody who ever played. He's not going to win the cup by himself, Pablo, but he's got scorers around him. He's got Hyman, he's got Draisaitl. I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on him. You mentioned Jason Tatum. Tremendous amount of pressure on him as well. I think there's actually more on McDavid. I do.
Yeah, I think there's more on McDavid. I also think that we're picking nits here in the sense that, okay, we're asking how much does he need to do to get the win here, right? So if they win a Stanley Cup, my view is greatness becomes reduced to an obituary level concern, right? Greatness is a big topic, Tony. And at the end of the day, at the end of your career, at the end of your life, they're going to ask, did you win? And they're not going to take the microscope as we are right now to this game and saying, but he did all this other stuff that undermined his team in the process. They're going to say, did he win? And I do believe if the answer to that question, which is binary, is yes, then he gets elevated, of course, beyond Jerome McGinley, Adam Oates, the best players who are a class below McDavid in terms of skill, obviously, who never won a cup. And so to me, the question is, will he win one? I like the odds of him winning one and therefore validating the greatness that we know underneath the hood.
It's so interesting to me because winning is incredibly important in hockey and it's incredibly important in basketball. It is far less important in baseball. You can spend your entire career. Ted Williams is Ted Williams. Okay,
Yes.
That's possible. In football, it's the same way because nobody thinks that one guy can win in football. Nobody thinks that can happen. So these are different things. And now we get to the really hard story and the one that I don't understand. The NCAA and the Power 5 conferences have settled 3 class action lawsuits and now will attempt to move forward with direct payments to college athletes. The NCAA will pay more than $2.7 billion to athletes, dating back to 2016, and the parties have agreed to a revenue-sharing plan that could see each Power 5 school pay up to $20 million a year to its athletes. So, Pablo, does this agreement make college sports clearer or more confusing?
So clear in one key sense, which is that the NCAA's plan has been revealed now in the light of day, right? So what have they been doing? They've been kicking the can down the road on paying athletes for as long as possible, such that they've gotten to the part of the road, Tony, that is jagged and messy and full of debris. And at the end of that road has been a lawyer named Jeffrey Kessler. That is the man who's been filing these antitrust lawsuits on behalf of all of these players. This is the man who, if the NCAA did not settle, would have bankrupted the NCAA and forced them to hit reset on the entire concept of college sports. And so what the NCAA said was, we will valiantly take the best, worst option, which is settlement, which is we're going to have to reimagine ourselves. We're going to have to now figure out what beyond this road is there for us. And Tony, down that road is going to be what is now far more confusing, which is, are these players going to have contracts? Are there going to be salary caps? To what extent will college sports even be college anymore? That's the big picture question that's coming up.
Yeah, so $20 million per school for athletes. Good luck trying to get a raise if you're a medieval art professor, because that's not going to happen. All the money is going to athletes. I am way over my skis on this. I do not understand it. I'm an English major and a sports writer. I'm not an economist and I'm not a lawyer. It seems to me, I'm happy that they have a settlement, but it also seems to me that this is going to lead to chaos in the near term. I'm going to make the assumption that football players and basketball players, because they bring money in, are going to get the most money here. And I think that that's fair, but I'm not sure that it's just. I just think there's going to be an enormous amount of confusion. And as long as you understand this, let me ask the obvious questions. Will wrestlers get paid? Will field hockey players get paid? Will soccer players get paid? Will Title IX litigate this and try to establish the exact same amounts for women and men? What's going to happen? It seems to me it's crazy.
There are so many more lawsuits to come. There are so many more lawyers who will charge billable hours for them to provide the clarity you are seeking. I then pose the question, Tony, what happens when the free market in full comes to college sports? It means that those field hockey players, the wrestlers, they will get paid in accordance to a market value that has now been unlocked. Is that good for field hockey players and wrestlers, right? NIL's given us a taste of this. I believe that we're going to have to really wonder, how much do we actually want our college sports to feel like college when justice means payment, which means a free market? I'm not saying you're going to like it. I'm just saying that justice is leading us down a direction that is very different than what it used to be.
I get that. Last couple of years, we've had outside money, NIL money, and we've had the transfer portal. Now we're dumping a huge amount of dough on inside money. College is paying it. It just seems to me in the near term, there's chaos. Let's take a break. Coming up, what's the best way to describe the importance of tonight's Game 2 for the Timberwolves?
And Shota Imanaga is back on the mound for the Cubs tonight. So what is the word for the season he is having?
There are so many athletes that aren't going to get paid anywhere near what basketball and football players are going to get paid.
Yeah,
They're not bringing in money.
College football coaches, those basketball coaches are going to make less as a result. They're going to have to take some haircuts.
Pardon the interruption.
It's time to go head-to-head with Mr. Fancy Word. What's first?
Tonight is a blank game for the Timberwolves against the Mavs.
All right, so what is my word? This is not a must game. It's an important game. It's not a pivotal game, not to me, because I believe that Minnesota lost 2 games at home in the last series and still won the series. Yep. It's not a critical game because you can't lose the series in the second game. So what is my word? And my word is, let me write it down here, or let me read it. Show us. It's a show us game. In this regard, we're going to get a chance to see what Minnesota is really all about. Their coach has already called them out. Their best player, Anthony Edwards, is in a terrible shooting slump, and they're playing against a team that won 6 fewer games than they did in the regular season. So it's time for Minnesota to show us who they are.
Yeah, this is a great man game for me, Tony. And I say great man as in great man theory. So great man theory was a historical philosophy in contrast with change that comes from below, right? There are people-powered revolutions and there are top-down revolutions. And in the NBA, as we talked about earlier, this is a league of superstars deciding the fate of the countries that they inhabit. And so for me, Anthony Edwards is the greatest man in this series. Anthony Edwards has been the person who has looked tired. Great man theory falls apart when your great man is sleepy, when he plays like he has, I don't know, no more gas left in the tank. But I know he does. He's young. He's springy. And so in this game, what I'm looking for is he going to be able to drive to the hoop? He has settled for three-pointers in a way that an older man would. But I know he's young. I know he's great. So will he take over? It's the Anthony Edwards series. It's the Anthony Edwards game in specific.
How can you be tired when you're, 23 years old and you had 3 days rest in between games? How can you be tired? What's next?
It's a fair question.
Shota Imanaga is back on the mound tonight. His start to the season has been blank.
It's been fabulous. My only chagrin here is that he plays for the Cubs, so this makes Wilbon too happy. And I'm not looking for that to happen. He's 5-0, I believe, with a 0.84 ERA. Let me say that ERA again, 0.84. That's even better than Fernando Valenzuela, who in his first 9 starts, I think, had a 0.91. Here's the thing. He's not particularly tall. I think he's 5'10". He's not particularly fast as a pitcher. He pitches around 90. In the World Baseball Classic, one of the people on Team USA said, and I want to get the quote right, that guy's not very good, but he's unhittable. So he's Greg Maddux, right? I mean, the Dodgers paid $325 million for Yamamoto, and I think that's going to be worth it. I do. The Cubs paid this guy $53 million. This is the greatest deal in the history of sports.
No, this is why this is Wilbonian to me, Tony. I'm going to cut to the chase here. You tease this, it's Wilbonian, okay? 2 reasons. Number 1, the guy is old school. You mentioned Greg Maddux, less generous Jamie Moyer. What do I mean? He throws 92, and he has a bunch of off-speed pitches, some of which I am told he has not revealed yet because he's facing teams one and done so far. So he'll break out like the slider for the second time through these teams. Now, the second reason why he's Wilbonian is because he visited Wrigley Field when it was cold out. And you know what was happening at Wrigley Field? There was a Northwestern Iowa football game. And Shota Imanaga from Japan looked at this and said, I want to play here. This is a Mike Wilbon fever dream. Northwestern football brought him to the Cubs, and he's having the greatest rookie season you can imagine for a pitcher.
So he can go with Wilbon to the Chicago Sky games. And Wilbon says he goes to every single game. That's the final word.
Yes.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, did the White Sox get hosed by the umps at the end of last night's game?
And why is Bronny James receiving the greatest number of bets to go #1 overall in the NBA draft?
Do you think that will happen? Do you think that happens?
I'm still trying to figure out if what I just read is a prank on us, because that seems insane. I cannot imagine.
Stay in school.
Apparently.
Get all the money that you... Happy time, people. Happy 70th birthday, Mitch Kupchak, Long Island's own Brentwood High School. Kupchak was an All-American in North Carolina for Dean Smith. He was on the 1976 Olympic gold medal team in Montreal. He was drafted 13th overall by the Washington Bullets and won a ring there in 1978, 2 other rings with the Lakers in 1982 and 1985. Kupchak became GM of the Lakers in 2000, and in his tenure, the Lakers won 4 more championships. In 2018, Kupchak joined his good friend Michael Jordan and was GM in Charlotte. Now that Jordan has sold the team, Kupchak stepped down from running things earlier this year. Pablo, I once played golf with Mitch at Bel Air at 6'9", it's a real long swing plane. Very nice fella, very nice.
Yeah, it seems that Mitch Kupchak always values proximity to stars, Tony, on the golf course, also as a GM. So when I think of him, I think of all of the guys he got, all of the guys he tried to get. Remember, this was the guy who went out and got Steve Nash. This is the guy who went out and got Dwight Howard with the Lakers, Pau Gasol. Also the guy who tried to get Chris Paul. In that trade, of course, David Stern vetoed it because the league was running the team. And he said, basketball reasons, sorry, no, can't do that. And Mitch Kupchak's life, I think, had a sliding doors moment with that specific transaction that made me think of him probably less than I would have otherwise.
Speaking of Chris Paul, a not-so-happy anniversary, Chris Paul. On this day 6 years ago, while on the Rockets, Paul injured his hamstring with under a minute to play in Game 5 of a tight series with the Warriors. Houston held on for the win and the 3-2 series lead, but dropped the next 2 games without Paul. Paul has had terrible luck in the postseason. This hamstring, another hamstring in 2015, a broken hand in 2016, COVID in 2021, a groin strain in 2023. Paul played 58 games this year with the Warriors, missed 21 others with a broken hand. There's talk that Paul might play next year with the Lakers, which would put him together with his good friend LeBron James. They are 2 of the 3 oldest players in the NBA.
And the ultimate sliding doors moment for Chris Paul was in that 2018 Western Conference Finals you alluded to. Keep in mind what happened in Game 7 against the Warriors. The Houston Rockets, who had shot and mastered the three-pointer more than any other team in NBA history to that point, right next to the Warriors, missed 27 three-pointers. And they did it because, in part, they didn't have a Chris Paul to orchestrate their offense. Chris Paul getting hurt in that series, another thing that changed basketball history as we understand it.
Happy trails to last night's game for the White Sox. Baltimore beat the White Sox, sending them to their 36th loss, the most in baseball. But the story here is the way the game ended, on a runner's interference call on Chicago's Andrew Vaughn. With 1 out and 2 on, Chicago's Andrew Benintendi, hope I get that name right, hit an infield pop-up. Benintendi was automatically out on the infield fly rule. But Vaughn, the runner on second, unintentionally touched Baltimore shortstop Gunnar Henderson while Henderson was trying to field the fly ball. Vaughn was on his way back to second when this happened. Henderson fielded the ball cleanly, but Vaughn was called out. Chicago manager Pedro Grifol argued no harm, no foul, but that didn't work. Game over. And White Sox play-by-play guy, former PTI intern John Schriffen, I hope I get that name right, said, and I'm quoting here, that cannot be the way the game ends. What is this nonsense? Unquote.
Yeah. Tony, I know we're not doing what's the word, it's the C's, but shambolic is the word that comes to mind because the league reaches out to the White Sox apparently after this and says, hey, that whole obstruction call thing probably shouldn't have been ruled in that way. The umps could have shown discretion. We could have gone spirit of the law over letter of the law, which is a giant shame because it ruined the game for anybody watching the game, let alone the people in the game.
All right, let's go to the big finish. Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports reports the Sixers could pursue Klay Thompson and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope this offseason. Do you like that?
I liked it 5 years ago. Luis Ariz is batting .419 since joining the Padres. Are you impressed?
He won a batting title in the American League with the Twins. He won a batting title in the National League with the Marlins. He's a great hitter. This is who he is. Bronny James has garnered the most bets to get picked first overall. Does that make sense to you?
Even if LeBron says, I'm going to the Hawks if they take him #1, this feels like a terrible idea for Bronny James. It does not make sense. One seed Novak Djokovic says he's worried heading into the French Open. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he hasn't won a tournament all year, and he's losing to people ranked well below him. Last one, Panthers-Rangers game 2 tonight. Who you got?
I got the Rangers because I'm in Manhattan. It's a beautiful day out, and I want this city to have, I don't know, some good vibes for a change around Madison Square Garden. That would be nice for me, personally.
Tell them they have to score at least one goal to win. We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time, and I'm Tony Kornheiser.
And I'm Pablo Torre. Thank you so much for watching. This is my podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out. But for now,
did you say earlier that you would throw my steaks in the garbage? Did you say that?
No, a hypothetical steak that was worse cooked than the steak you gave me, which was great. Great steak. Your steak.
Timberwolves respond tonight.
I have them winning, Tony, because I believe in Anthony Edwards. And that's the question to me here. Kyrie Irving has been fantastic at the end of games. The Mavericks, by the way, just the general idea that 2 years ago you would have told me, you know who's going to be really trustworthy basically across the board? Kyrie Irving. And you know who's going to be playing like Michael Jordan, Anthony Edwards? I would have questioned what drugs someone had slipped into my drink. But that's what we're dealing with right now. And the question is whether Anthony Edwards is going to live up to the idea that he is a closer too. And he's lived up to it, winning in 7 games against the Nuggets. I think he takes over the series with game 2 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's on him. He's 12 of 40 in his last 2 games. That's 30% shooting. That's really, you're not a superstar if you're shooting 12 of 40. Look, I don't think it's necessarily a critical game because you can't lose a best-of-7 series 2-0. And we all know that in the last series, Minnesota lost 2 games at home and still beat Denver. That is the greatest accomplishment of the playoffs so far is Minnesota beating Denver. And now we are down to 4 teams. And this is a very bright light on Minnesota for the first time. They earned it by beating Denver in Game 7. But this is a brighter light than they have ever seen before. It's a brighter light that Anthony Edwards has ever played in before. Not necessarily all the players. And the coach of that team called him out. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the last time the coach of that team called him out, it was about Karl Anthony Towns. And he took too many shots and he was going for some sort of scoring record. And the coach said, this is not the way we play. And the team responded great after that. This, I believe, is the next time he's called them out. So like you, I believe they will respond great. I do.
Yeah, they won in 7 games in the de facto NBA Finals against the Nuggets. And now it's time for them to take charge again, reassert themselves, as I must reassert myself here by saying, that is it. We are done. Back to you.